Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to dive into that universal human drive, trying to understand everything, the cosmos, ourselves. And it's fascinating how often the really deep insights, they seem to come from just one person, someone trying to put the unexplainable into words. So today we're taking a deep dive into a stack of sources that explore exactly this, how individuals way back in history or even right now online try to explain really complex stuff. We're talking spiritual awakening, maybe occult powers, or even just what is reality. We're looking at the impact of that single voice.
Right. Our mission really is to unpack the different ways these explainers articulate what they understand. We'll look at their methods, their insights, and how these unique perspectives can shift things for other people, and maybe even shift our own understanding of what it really means to know something. We're pulling from historical texts, spiritual guides, and like you said, even some really raw personal accounts shared online. It's about the power of one person explaining.
Okay, so if that's the big picture, how does this one person explaining idea actually work in like a practical way? Let's start with something, well, pretty direct. It's about influencing reality. We've got the source, Awaken, the God of Miracle, and it gives very specific instructions. Basically tells you how to manifest your dreams. You say things like, I own this wonderful house now. I hold the key right now. The God of Miracles had kindly gifted me this house. I feel great now. And then it says you need to listen to these statements a number of times in your mind and in your whole body. And, crucially, keep feeling the intensified sensations or even goosebumps for about 180 seconds. It's a very clear, almost formulaic explanation.
Yeah, it is. And what's fascinating is how this, seemingly modern, almost self-help instruction, it connects to a much older tradition of singular insights. Brian Gibbons, in Spirituality and the Occult, he points this out. How occult spirituality is going back to the Renaissance, offered these complete explanations of nature from one person's view. You take Giordano Bruno, right?
Yeah.
16th century. He saw nature as none other than God in all things, pretty radical. Or Jacob Bohm, the German mystic, a bit later. He explained the world as nothing else but a manifestation of the eternity of the eternal mind and will. These weren't just little ideas. They were huge universe-explaining frameworks from individual thinkers.
That's a really helpful connection. So bring it forward. How does this play out today, personally? Shakti Gawain in Living in the Light, she really seems to embody this. One person explaining their own journey of creating her own reality. She talks about realizing this creative power she felt wasn't just her personality, it came from somewhere else.
Right, she called it inner guidance or higher self.
Yeah, exactly. A higher self that seemed to know more than I did. She even said the title for her book, Living in the Light, felt like she received it, not thought of it. It's her story, but she's explaining it as a kind of universal thing anyone can tap into.
And if you look at the bigger picture she paints, Gawain's view marks a shift. She basically says the old world was all external focus. Chasing happiness through money, stuff, relationships.
The usual suspects.
Exactly. But the new world, she explains, is built as we open to the higher power of the universe within us. So it's her personal explanation, but it's framed as this universal transformation happening. The power comes from inside.
Okay, so Gawain shows the power of shaping external reality through inner guidance. But what about explaining the inner world itself, especially when it gets difficult? That leads us to these really raw accounts of the dark night of the soul. We found some direct experiences shared on Reddit. One user, Pondering Life 77, explains just this horrific time. Not only was my inner world in complete shambles, my relationship of 7 years suddenly ended, as well as a few lifelong friendships. Just devastating.
Yeah.
But then they explain the flip side, the reward. The journey is the lesson. The pain is the reward. There is infinite joy and love to be had. And another user put it so starkly, suffered and didn't know it, now I suffer and I know it. These are people explaining profound shifts in perspective born from pain.
That's incredibly powerful, isn't it? And it brings up a key question. How do we even start to make sense of these really intense inner states? The idea of the third eye offers one kind of explanation, one framework. The Theosophical Society explains it like this. When you meditate, the phenomenal world, the everyday world disappears, and you connect with this peace and stillness and essence that we call our soul. And they even connect it to quantum physics, suggesting the material world only exists when we observe it. So the third eye in this view is our inner vision. It's the tool to perceive this other reality, the noumenal world beyond our senses. It's one explanation trying to bridge the seen and unseen.
And it's not just theory, right? There's a practical side. This source, How to Open Your Third Eye, explains that developing it takes work. Things like cultivating self-awareness and discernment. It even warns about challenges, headaches, vivid or unsettling dreams, or emotional sensitivity, and advises you to slow down, ground yourself, and integrate the experiences.
Exactly. It's someone explaining not just the what, but the how, and even the potential bumps in the road.
Yeah.
A kind of user manual for inner development.
Right, a roadmap for something deeply personal.
And if we dive even deeper into this whole area of heightened perception, Swami Panchadasi, in Clairvoyance and Occult Powers, he gives these incredibly detailed explanations of psychic abilities. What's really striking is not just the range of stuff he covers, but his attempt to create this almost scientific-sounding system for it all.
Like trying to make the mystical logical.
Sort of, yeah. He talks about telepathy, and he cites these historical experiments, the Creary experiments, with kids guessing cards. He says they got 127 successes on the first attempt, way beyond chance. For him, this proved genuine and real telepathy. And he explains it as transmission and receiving of waves of vibratory force. He's building a whole model.
Vibratory force.
Ah.
Okay. And he goes beyond telepathy.
Oh, yeah. He explains clairvoyance, too. And he makes a distinction. It's not just mind-to-mind like telepathy. It's like your mind being extended out until it actually touches the mind of the other person and sees what is there.
Wow. Okay. That's quite a visual.
Isn't it? And he gives examples. This dean's wife who dreamed her house in Richmond was on fire.
And it actually happened later.
Exactly. A precise premonition. Or that story about John Williams having the same dream 3 times about the assassination of Mr. Spencer Percival.
The prime minister at the time.
The very same.
Yeah.
And it happened just as he dreamt. Panchadasi presents these as proof of concept for his explanations.
So how does he explain seeing the future or things happening far away?
Well, that brings us to the Akashic records, or he also calls them records of the astral light. He explains this as a kind of universal substance, like a cosmic hard drive where all the happenings of the entire world cycle is preserved.
Everything that's ever happened.
That's the idea. So, advanced clairvoyance, he claims, can tap into this and see a moving picture of the history of any part of the Earth, or even glimpse the future by seeing the results of all causes at present in action. It's this massive, singular explanation for universal memory and prediction.
A cosmic library.
Yeah.
Accessible through clairvoyance. That's quite something. Does he cover anything else?
He does. He explains astral body traveling. Not just seeing, but like your astral self actually extending itself out and thus actually feels the astral activities there.
So like remote feeling.
Kinda, yeah. And thought forms. This idea that if you think strongly enough of yourself being somewhere else, you actually create a thought form of himself at that place. And someone with clairvoyant vision might actually see it.
Okay, wait. So if I'm really wishing I was on a beach right now, am I creating a little thought me sipping a coconut?
According to Panchadasi's explanation, maybe? It's definitely a fascinating framework he builds. One person trying to systematize all these extraordinary claims.
It really is. But stepping back, how do these kinds of very specific, often unusual explanations from one person actually spread? How do they influence things?
That's a great question, and it connects back to Gibbon's work. He argues these individual occult or spiritual explanations don't just stay niche, they actually shape broader culture. He points to the secularization of occult spiritualities in the Romantic movement and says you can see the influential role of the occult in much of what is taken to be typically modern.
So like poets and writers picking up on these ideas.
Exactly. Figures like William Blake, Coleridge, even Victor Hugo. Gibbons argues they incorporated these esoteric themes, reflecting an occult worldview explained by others before them. These singular explanations ripple outwards.
And it wasn't just confined to art, was it?
No, not at all. Gibbons explains how occult thinking influenced science too. Think Johannes Kepler, right? His astronomy had this mystical geometrical approach.
Yeah.
Or even much later, physicists like Erwin Schrödinger and Werner Heisenberg apparently had interest in the occult.
Wow.
And even politics. Gibbons mentions occultist egalitarianism during the English interregnum in the 17th century. Groups like the Diggers, who had this vision, this explanation of restoring the earth to a common treasury for everyone.
So one person's explanation, their vision, can literally inspire social movements. That's powerful.
It really shows the potential reach.
Right.
But it also raises questions about the nature of explanation itself. Gibbons brings up Francis Yates's famous thesis about Renaissance Hermeticism, that mix of magic, alchemy, philosophy, and how it might have, perhaps surprisingly, helped pave the way for the scientific worldview.
How so? Seems counterintuitive.
Well, the idea is that even though it seems like the opposite of empirical science, the occult belief in hidden forces sort of implied a law-bound universe that could be understood, even manipulated. But then there's debate, as Gibbons notes. Scholars like Vickers question if we're just projecting our modern ideas back onto these figures, or were they, as some suggest, already participated in our theoretical discourses? It gets you thinking about how we even interpret these explanations across time.
Yeah, it really does. I'm bringing it back to the practical, Panchadasi again. He even explains psychic healing. He lays out these principles. 1, strong desire to make the cure. 2, clear mental image of the desired condition. And 3, concentration of the healer. Pretty straightforward. But then he adds something really interesting. With the proper degree of faith and confidence on the part of the patient, there is but little need of a healer, for the patient may treat and cure himself.
Right. That's a powerful shift, isn't it?
It really is. One person explaining how you hold the power to heal yourself, it puts the agency right back on the individual. So, enough faith cures my headache. It sounds so simple, maybe too simple.
Well, that's the core of his explanation. And he doesn't stop there. He even tackles our basic senses.
Yeah.
He explains that our 5 senses are just channels of information open to the ego or soul. And that in occult thinking, humans actually have 7 senses, but 2 aren't fully developed in most people.
7 senses. What are the other 2?
He doesn't fully detail them, but intriguingly, he notes that what he calls savage and barbaric men, his terms obviously dated, have 1 sense more developed than civilized man. He calls it the sense of the presence of other living things.
Like an intuitive awareness of your surroundings.
Something like that, yeah. It implies our standard way of knowing, our default explanation of reality through just 5 senses, might actually be incomplete. That maybe civilization has caused us to lose touch with certain ways of perceiving. It's a radical idea, suggesting these singular explainers might be pointing to faculties we've forgotten.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've really taken a deep dive into how just one person explains, well, everything. The world, the self, the unseen. From ancient mystics whose ideas shaped philosophy to, people today sharing incredibly raw spiritual journeys online to teachers like Panchadasi mapping out psychic abilities. These singular voices, they offer these pathways to understanding that often really push against conventional thinking. They give us new frameworks.
Absolutely. Whether it's through simple affirmations or these really deep personal stories or incredibly detailed systems like Panchadasi's. These explanations, they invite us, really, to look beyond the surface, to question our assumptions about what's real or possible, and they show the incredible impact that one person's perception and their ability to articulate it can have on how we all understand things. It's the power of a single, well-explained idea.
So thinking about all this, what does it mean for you, listening right now? If the world really is a kind of mirror of our consciousness, like some of these sources suggest, how might your unique way of explaining your own inner world, your experiences, how might that actually be shaping the reality you perceive? What insights are bubbling up for you, and how could they become your own one person explaining for the universe you inhabit? Something to ponder.